Hey, Leilani with the Magical Solution here, and I'm going to say something controversial. In the type of Espiritismo that I practice, it does not begin with your spirits, your court, your spiritual court. It does not begin with your ancestors. It begins with you. You have no idea how many times and how many questions I get from new practitioners or from new people interested in Espiritismo who have this assumption that Espiritismo is practiced in the same way as Hoodoo or the Orisha traditions or any of the other ATRs. And although Espiritismo is very much embedded in the culture, very much influenced by these practice, very much syncretized in a lot of ways, one of the things that makes Espiritismo very distinguished from all the other practices is that this idea of ancestors, this idea of spirits, spiritual courts, this idea of external entities from which we need to work with comes secondary to you. See, Espiritismo is about progression. It is about truth. It is about light. It is about working with the virtues, working with your personal spirit self, higher self, and developing that. And so when it comes to teaching my students, when it comes to starting them off, I do not start them off with trying to figure out, their ancestors and working with their ancestors. I don't start them off with their spiritual court. I don't start them off with trying to figure out who all their guides are. I start them off in a very mystical way, which is alone time with you, yourself, and you. And God, of course. But the goal is to build that spiritual stamina, that spiritual grit, to build up your willpower, to build up your connection with God, and to build up your own discernment. This is done on your own, in your own space, at your altar. Which brings me to my next point, the altar. In Espiritismo, we don't really have altars per se. We don't really have shrines per se. What we do have are different areas in which we do different things. And let me kind of clarify that. So depending on the type of Espiritismo that you work with, that altar space will be called something different. So in some traditions, it might be called the Boveda Espiritual, and in other traditions, it might be called the Mesa Blanca. In other traditions, it might not be anything at all. It might just be an icon or a figure or a statue that is venerated through the line, the family line, etc. Right? But the point of these altars is to serve very distinct purposes within that specific tradition of Espiritismo. Now, in my specific tradition and in the way that I teach my students, because we start them off with themselves and their connection to their higher self and their connection to God, the Mesa Blanca, because again, although my tradition is criollo in its makeup, it stems from Puerto Rico, from Mesa Blanca type of Espiritismo. However, bringing it into the new age, bringing it into the 21st century, and bringing into the meta-modern way of handling things, I am also adding the esoteric and mystic practice of Espiritismo. And by doing that, the Mesa Blanca then transforms into what some might call an oblate, or what some might call a personal meditation center. This is a space where you go to work with you, your higher self, and with God, for all the reasons that I had mentioned before. By spending time here and by spiritually developing with community in Misa, we then determine when you are ready to move up to that next phase where your personal space now becomes the Mesa Blanca that is traditional. okay, with the glass of water, the lights, the this, the that, and all the accoutrements. This is then where we begin to incorporate your primary spirit guides, your ancestors, your spiritual courts, etc., etc. And even then, the organization of your altar, your altars, your various mesa blancas, your various boveda espirituales, whatever you want to call them, will depend on you and your specific tradition. I'm making this video right now because a few of my friends here on TikTok and on Instagram and YouTube are making videos about altars right now, and I'm going to tag them in the little caption below. But I wanted to make a whole separate video because some of the other topics that they talk about within their video I don't have license to speak on. So I wanted to make a whole separate video entirely just talking about my specific experience with Espiritismo. So definitely check out their profiles, check out their videos, but most importantly, make sure that you follow me on all social media sites, especially YouTube. If the TikTok ban does go through, I want to make sure that your spiritual journey and your curiosity with regards to Metamodern Espiritismo is fulfilled and your questions are answered, and that you have access to me, my classes, my mentorships, and my newsletters. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. My name is Leilani. This is The Magical Solution, and this is how we grow.